I want to make a sequel to the last video I made on color tinting 101. Just kind of touch on some things that maybe I forgot and things that I think are important. I'm not in the phase of editing my videos yet, so I'm just kind of going on the fly and thinking of things as I go. So one of the things I was going to talk about is alternates and how to understand alternates. And basically, when you have a color formula, and I talked in my last video as far as Toyota 040 goes, or any color, they generally 99 times out of 100 have what they call an alternate. And so for example, what an alternate means is, so when you type in, when you're a painter and you go into your computer system, say for example you're using Sicken's Autobase Plus, which is a solvent line, or you might use Autowave, which is their waterborne edition, and you type in Toyota 040, they have what they call alternates. So say for example, and I'm going to use my spray outs from the last video, and if you didn't see the last video, you got to see it. It's pretty good stuff. So say for example, you have a color like this. This is your, what they call your standard color, and when I sprayed DuPont, they called it most popular color position. So some paint lines will be like #1 toner, and then every alternate is based off of that #1 toner. So for example, this is your #1 toner, and so say for example you're doing Toyota 040, you go to your computer, you type it in, you have a chipbook that goes along with the color, and so say there's 4 alternates. Say there's the standard alternate, and then there's say a redder alternate, a bluer alternate, and say a coarser alternate or a lighter alternate, whatever it is. Basically, all those alternates are off of the standard alternate. So if you have the standard alternate and you have a redder alternate, the redder card, which I had it in the last video, say this redder card is redder than the standard formula. And say, for example, you had a lighter alternate, it would be lighter than the standard formula, or coarser than the standard formula, or whatever the actual color variation is. That's how they base it off of, is the standard formula. So you have the #1 chip or the standard formula or whatever they call it in that particular paint line, and everything is based off of that. So that was one thing I wanted to touch on. The other thing I was going to touch on, which I feel is super important, is you can always get away, in my opinion, you're always better off to spray a lighter color versus a darker color. So if you're tinting colors and it's a hair light, well, I'd say you want to spray it because a lot of times the clear will actually darken the colors, #1, but #2, the customer's always going to pick apart a darker color. Say for example, you're doing a silver. If it's darker, if it's 2 shades too dark, you'll get busted on the color and you'll have to respray it. If it's 2 shades too light, chances are you might get away with it. So it's one thing that I thought I didn't cover in the last video, and I thought it was super important. The other thing I thought about is pearls tend to lighten and brighten a color, and your toners actually tend to, most of the time, they'll make them darker or just saturated with color, more rich and pure with color. So I thought I'd touch on that a little bit. One thing I do, which is huge, is I like to, a lot of times with metallics, I like to tint with the flop controls. Your flop control is a clear substance. It's like a binder almost, that basically bonds itself or binds to the paint and then stands your metallic up. So say for example you're doing a silver and you want a side cast that's a little cleaner and lighter, I'll add flop control. And so that's probably one of my go-to ways to tint a metallic. Not always, I mean every case is a case-by-case basis and everything's different. Also low strength whites, but it'll give you kind of a milky side cast. So that's another way to tint a color. Another thing that's huge is spray out cards. The one big thing is every time I paint a vehicle, I make 3 spray out cards. So I make 1 spray out card with the initial color. Say for example, again, Toyota 040 white, standard alternate. I seal the car itself, and then I seal the spray out card so I have a duplicate match. And then I seal 3 spray out cards, I base 3 spray out cards, and I put the number 1 card off to the side, and I have basically 2 cards that I tint with. So if I take say for example, I'm doing Toyota 40 white and the card is redder than the actual spray out card, and I add red to it. So I'll check it with 1 spray out card, and then when I make the adjustment, I'll tint the color, I'll spray it through the gun a little bit, and then I'll spray it on my 2nd card. And then now I can compare the 2. So I can say, okay, I went from this greenish kind of version of the white to the redder version. So I tinted it, it turned it red. And like I said in the last video, I like to use percentages, and I'm very calculated about how I tint things. I'm kind of calculated in life in general, but so how I tint things. And so say for example, you have this spray out card and you put 0.1 magenta in, and you moved it, say 50% of where it needed to go, and you just needed to do it 1 more time. So you go in and drop 0.1 of magenta in again, and then now, so you this was your spray out card, then you sprayed it, your adjustment or your 2nd spray out on this card. Then you go back and spray your 2nd adjustment on the original card and compare it. So the 2 spray out cards show you the direction the color is moving. And then I just bounce back and forth from spray out 1 to spray out 2. I just keep, as I'm adjusting and tinting the color, I go back from one card to the other and watch how I'm adjusting the color. And then the beauty is, if you leave the number 1 spray out card to the side, remember how I said I make 3 spray out cards. So I clear that spray out card at the end, and that's the actual alternate that I'm using. But the beauty is say I've adjusted the color 5 times, for example, which is a lot sometimes, but say I adjust it 5 times. I can take the original spray out card and compare it to the 5th adjustment, and I can say, wow, I really moved that color a lot. So it really helps show if you're going in the right direction on a color. Or you could say, wow, I moved it way too much, or whatever the case may be. It's something I thought I'd touch on. The other thing I thought I'd touch on too, which is super important when you're painting cars, and I know the new spray out card libraries with the new system, as far as their color chip index, their books are very accurate, they're hand sprayed and so on and so forth, and they match. As I make spray out card libraries. And so like I said, the number 1 spray out card, I clear coat at the end of the job when I clear coat the car. And now I have, say, Toyota 041 standard alternate for my spray out card library. And so every time I paint a car, I make a spray out card for it. And say on the next job, I do the lighter formula, or if I'm for some reason cutting in parts, I'll use the lighter formula just to make enough to cut it in and put 2 coats on the outside of the car when I go to paint it. And then now I have the standard alternate and the lighter alternate. So the more you build your spray out card libraries, the better off you'll be, and the faster it takes a little bit of time to make the libraries, but in the end I found that once you get a sufficient library, especially if you're spraying the same cars over and over again, once you get a library built up, it's pretty criminal on how fast you can get things done, because you can really, get a good idea of what the color's going to look like before you even step in the booth. So that's pretty cool. Last thing I was going to say is this is solvent, and I'm probably more used to solvent than I am water. I'm a little bit old school, but I have sprayed water and I do like it. So one way to basically, when you're tinting a color, a lot of times guys will use degreaser, to wax and grease remover. They'll pour wax and grease or spray wax and grease on their spray out cards, and then they'll compare it to the car, which is a good way to go. If you want a super accurate color, I would spray clear coat on it. One little trick that I found years ago is I used to keep clear coat and just reducer and not hardener in a PPS cup. And so when I make my spray out cards, if I thought, hey, I matched the color and I got it really, really close, then I'll actually clear it. So I would just plug in my clear coat gun and then use that PPS cup with the clear and the reducer. Now you want to be careful. You don't want to get it mixed up when you go to actually spray the job. You don't want to use that on the car, but this is just for your spray out cards. It can be a quick way to just shoot a coat of clear on and find out how close your color is without your clear coat hardening and catalyzing. So that's really important, I found. But like I said, you want to label it and make sure you never put it on a car because it'll never dry. So, but it's one little trick to be able to, top coat your spray out cards and get an accurate color. So I feel that's super important. But at any rate, this is the second part to the Color Tinting 101, and I hope you guys find some value in this. And there's a lot to tinting. Just be patient. One other thing I might add is it takes time. It takes time to train your eye to see the different shades of colors. It took me, several years to where I felt fairly comfortable in tinting. So don't give up and just keep on working at it. And it's really what separates the men from the boys. Color tinting's can be a pain in the butt. I've worked with guys who've been doing it for 30 years and they're phenomenal painters and they struggle and with certain colors. Some colors kick their butt, and every painter gets one, and sometimes it's some weeks you get more than others. But just be cognizant about what you're doing, and if you have a passion for it and you really want things to turn out right, then I think they will. So, well, hopefully that helped you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.